Changing Lanes, the official podcast of BMW. Welcome to this episode of Changing Lanes, the official podcast of BMW. My name's Jonathan.
And my name is Nicki Shields.
Now, Nicki is a new voice on Changing Lanes, and it's so great to have you here, Nicki. Thank you so much for joining us.
Well, thank you, Jonathan. It's very exciting to be here, although I'm slightly nervous about what we're going to be discussing in this podcast, because I think the challenge has been set really high for my very first podcast with Changing Lanes. We are, of course, going to be discussing some of the greatest cars that we've seen over BMW's history. So I'm very nervous about my picks and how they're going to be received.
Exactly, same here. And yes, they are our top 6 picks of all time for our favorite BMW racing cars. And who knows, maybe this is part 1 of part 2, 3, 4, a whole series, who knows. But for now, for this podcast episode, we've narrowed down to our top 6 all-time favorite BMW racing cars, and we are so excited to share them with you.
We are. It has not been an easy task, but I have actually really enjoyed the experience, really enjoyed the sort of the researching. It's got me quite excited about a few old classics that you kind of forget about. But we do promise you guys that we've tried our very hardest to come up with our best selection that covers all the genres, and to give you a few teasers, I suppose, to whet your appetite. We have managed to include a few long distance races. There is an F1 classic in there. Yes, you can start to create your own guesses at the moment. And we've also included a bit of a nod to the future of motivation. So do stick with us, because we'll be sharing you why we picked them, why we love them, and why we think that, well, you're going to be head over heels for them as well by the end of this episode.
Exactly. All right, so I can't wait to get started. So let's just dive on in through this history of BMW motorsport. So, Nicki, do you want to do the honors and want to kick off everything by telling us about the first car on your list of the all-time favorites and why you picked it?
Yes, Jonathan, it would be my absolute pleasure. Right, okay. So now, as I said, to reiterate, this was a tough decision, but I do quite think that my first one is a good one. So let's set the scene here. One of the most famous rallies of all time was the Mille Miglia. Now, it was an endurance rally over 1,000 miles in Italy. It ran in the 1920s up to the end of the 1950s, 1927 to 1957. And now, as you can imagine, it was an Italian rally. So it was dominated by local Italian drivers, beautiful Italian cars, probably some beautiful Italian drivers as well, actually, I must say. But in the course of its 30-year history, there were actually only 3 races that were won by foreign cars. And on one of these occasions was in 1940. Hopefully you should be getting a bit of clue to what car I'm choosing here. And 8 hours and 55 minutes after the end of the race, that checkered flag went down, the average speed of 105 miles per hour, and the race was won by Fritz von Hanstein and Walter Baumann. Now, apologies for my terrible German pronunciation, but the clue is there. They are German drivers. They were driving the BMW 328 Mille Miglia Touring Coupe, which is just an absolutely stunning car. I mean, it is... But in my eyes, it's a piece of art. It's pure elegance. They scored the overall victory. The team won the overall victory. They also came third, fifth, and they were in 6th place. So it was a fantastic result for them in 1940. And the car itself, well, Jonathan, I mean, I'm sure you've seen it as well.
Yeah.
It is absolutely stunning. It's a straight 6, 1,971 cc. It's got 80 PS and a 4-speed manual gearbox. And it's an absolute beauty. What do you reckon?
I mean, I'm right there with you, but we have to consider that, we're in like 2021 and this was 1940. So if you're looking at this race car and you're like, wait, what? This was a beauty back then? For our eyes, for 2021, it might look like a cartoon drawing of a marshmallow toy car, right? But back then, it was just absolutely astounding. And even if you didn't like it back then in 1940, even if you were alive back then, you should never judge a book by its cover, because this is a car that's a winner. And I think you have a little story to share with us about the 328, don't you?
I do have a story, but I've got to go back on that description there. A cartoon drawing of a marshmallow toy car. I think that's an insult to such a gorgeous looking thing.
I know, but it's beautiful. I mean, because we see it in our eyes, but like for somebody that's never seen it before, it's like, wait a minute, what? This won all these races? But of course, back then in 1940, it had these different shapes and styles and designs. So I think it's a beauty. But for the unattuned eye, for the eye that's like, wait, what? you could go down that road, but we're not going to go down that road.
And it's got the total sort of opposite. Well, I say opposite, slightly opposite shape of grille. I mean, we're actually almost veering back to that shape grille now. They're very long and narrow, these kind of very strange nostrils of the car. But it really was quite an iconic look, that's for sure. But yeah, I had an amazing experience with it actually back in it was 3 years ago at Goodwood. So in the UK, we have this amazing event, annual event called Goodwood Festival of Speed, when it is the sort of the great and the good of the racing community get together and basically show off the best cars in the world. And one of those cars that was there was the 328. Wow. And honestly, I was a passenger in a drive along the hill climb, and it was just one of those beautiful moments where you just really got a sense of nostalgia, what it must have felt like to be in the rally back then, such a long time ago. And getting into the passenger seat of this car, you got to see the interior as well, and it was just still in absolutely pristine condition.
Amazing.
So it was a real treat, a very, very, very special occasion. It was an honor and a privilege. So that's another reason why this is one of my top picks.
I'm a little bit jealous, I must admit.
We'll have to get you along to Goodwood next year.
Exactly.
Okay, so go on then. Tell me, what's next on your list?
All right, so let's jump from 1940 to 1960. And, I'm all about design. I'm all about the look and feel of everything. So we're jumping ahead 20 years to one of my favorites. And yeah, it's got a rather unusual, unique, but super cool design, especially for the time. Now, here's the thing. If you get the design right, not just in cars, but in anything, if you get the design right with cars, with ships, with houses, with toy cars, like I was saying before, if you get the design right, everything just follows the form, right? So power was no longer the priority to deliver the speed. The design was also part of that as well in 1960. So you're probably wondering what car this might be. So let me just describe it for you, and maybe it might be coming up in your head. So if you look at the shape of this car, one of my favorites, it's got a flatter body compared to the one that we were talking about before. It's got these subtle round edges and a long and flat windshield, and there is no kidney grille. Ouch, right? Like, what's going on? But bear with me.
A BMW with no kidney grille? Surely not. And it's made it into our top 6 list.
Bear with us.
Blasphemous.
And the thing that I absolutely love about the design of this car are the headlights. They are perfect circles, and they're low to the ground, so it looks like when the lights are on, it's scanning the entire racetrack for the next car to pass and take over and win. If you haven't guessed it already, I'm talking about the 700 RS, which was partially based off of the big Isetta and the BMW 600, and it was the first BMW with a self-supporting body. So, Nicki, how do you fare? What do you think?
Totally. I completely agree with you. It was really groundbreaking at the time because I think it got everybody really talking about it, because the fact that it only had 70 PS, we're talking about a race car here with 70 PS, it weighed in though at just under 1,410 pounds. Now, they obviously spent a huge amount of time trying to tweak this car to make it as light as possible. One of the ways they did this anyway, it was supported by a space frame chassis and then clothed by an extremely low aluminium body. And because of that, it was nice and light. It was this lightweight racer, and it still managed to achieve an impressive 100 miles per hour, which I think is pretty impressive, really. It was designed for hill climbs, and it was sort of popularized, and particularly actually by Hans Stuck back in his heyday for winning a lot of races. So I think a very impressive design there, and definitely one worth having on our list.
Most definitely, an eye-catcher to say the least.
Yeah, for sure. I'm glad we agree on these. This is good. This is a good start to changing lanes going forward. Although I'm sure the arguments will follow at some point.
Exactly.
And actually, we must say that, for all of our listeners, if you do disagree or agree with our top 6 list that me and Jonathan have put together, then do let us know. We'd love to hear from you. You can put it, if you go to where you download the podcast in Spotify, which I think is in Spotify, you can actually then rate the podcast and tell us your top 6 cars. The other way of doing it is, of course, emailing into us at Changing Lanes. I'm not entirely sure what the email address is, but Jonathan, I'm sure you know.
Changinglanes@bmw.com.
Okay, thank you very much. I will learn that for next time.
You're welcome.
Right, so what's next on our list?
All right, next on our list, we are moving ahead a little bit into the future, 1 decade and 3 years to 1973, when I'm just going to say it because it's such a good-looking car, the BMW 3.0 CSL.
So cool.
Ooh.
It's so cool.
This is it's a piece of work. Oh, it's so good. So in podcast episode 21, if you scroll on back, we talked about the BMW M logo with its red, light blue, and dark blue logo and how it changed to purple a little bit. It had this beautiful transition for the entire logo and the branding of the BMW M brand, right? So what each color means and all that stuff and how it all evolved over the years. But get this, the BMW 3.0 CSL was responsible for etching those 3 colors in race car fans' minds in 1973. This was groundbreaking stuff, right? And to top it all off, it became the first BMW art car, which we also did a podcast on in episode 39. This car is just so beautiful, and it's pretty good on the racetrack, isn't it, Nicki?
Yeah, it turns out it's had some pretty impressive results. But I do get back to what you're saying. Just the shape, the look of this car is just so iconic. That low front trim, it's got such an aggressive front to it. I absolutely adore it. But as you mentioned, I think it's probably easier to say what it didn't win, because as well as triumphing in the European Touring Car Championship on no less than 6 occasions, it also came first in its class at Le Mans and secured an overall victory and came first in its class at the 24 Hours of Daytona, which of course is the big endurance race in the USA. So it really has had a phenomenal history on the racetracks, and some of the models packed up to 800 PS, which is mind-blowing. If you think back to our earlier pick with just 80 PS, it really did just blaze around circuits, racking up win after win. And with this car again, there was obviously a lot of focus on keeping it lightweight, and that was achieved by using thinner steel to build up the unit body and also using aluminium doors, bonnet, boot lid, and then Perspex side windows. So there's a little fun fact for you. But Jonathan, question for you, and as your German pronunciation is way better than mine, CSL,
all right.
What does it stand
for?
So
here's the thing. When I heard about the CSL, we're talking like way back when I was like 10 years old. I was like, oh, it's like a really cool like abbreviation and it doesn't really mean anything. On the contrary, CSL in BMW 3.0 CSL actually stands for Coupe Sport Leichtbau. So coupe means coupe, obviously, or coupe, however you pronounce it. Sport means obviously sport. So we get the C, we get the S, but the word that is associated with the L, what is that? Well, in German, it's called Leichtbau, which Leichtbau, exactly.
Leichtbau.
And very good, actually.
How's
really,
really
good. But a lot of people might not know what Leichtbau means. So if you do the direct translation, which isn't the real meaning, but the actual direct translation, like bit for bit, Leichtbau translates to light build. So leicht is light and bau is build. But that's not the real meaning of it, right? That was very strategic and breaking down the words and vocabulary. But the real definition of Leichtbau is lightweight construction. So something a race driver definitely needs to zip through the racetrack to tally up all those wins, just like you were saying, Nicki.
Fascinating. Well, there we go. Okay, so the clue was in the name all along, and I didn't realise.
Exactly.
Great. I love all these fun facts we're learning about these cars. The question is, can we remember them? We'll have to do a little test in a few months'
Exactly. Well, speaking about names, I know the next car that's on our list, I've always had trouble saying it, but it seems to just roll off your tongue as you do it. So I'm going to segue on over to you so you can introduce the next top car on our list.
Brilliant. Thank you, Jonathan. Okay, well, coming in at number 4 on our list is, I feel like we should have a drum roll for this because it is a bit of a hint of the F1 classic that I did mention earlier. It is the 1983 BMW Brabham BT52. B52. Now, the reason that we picked this car, because in the early 80s, the F1 era massively took off. Such a cool era, by the way. We need to do a podcast on that because I just loved the F1 turbo era. It's a favourite of mine. And I'm sure the name Bernie Ecclestone might ring a bell to you, Jonathan. Well, Bernie Ecclestone was the Brabham owner at the time in 1983, and he actually asked BMW to build a turbocharged inline-4 engine from 1982 onwards. And it was the famous designer Gordon Murray who delivered the BT52. Now, key ingredients we're talking here. It had a 1.5 litre incline 4-cylinder engine, a turbocharged that could produce up to 1,400 horsepower. Now, that was actually only allowed during qualifying mode. During race mode, it had to be tweaked down to sort of between 800 and 900 brake horsepower. Still a huge amount of power. And consequently, the BT52 staked its claim as world champion. And Jonathan, I've got a question for you, a little F1 quiz question. Do you remember who the driver was? He won his second F1 World Championship title in 1983.
You're getting me on the spot. If I had the opportunity to look at my phone and Google it, I would, but I can't say it off the top of my head. I'm ashamed to say that.
It is. Sorry, I should have warned you I was going to put you on the spot for that.
Yes.
Nelson Piquet, Brazilian racing driver. So he won the Formula, it was his second Formula One World Championship title driving that BT52. And what an amazing car to win in. It really was a spectacular season for him. And
most definitely. I mean, you even mentioned about the turbo era and everything. I remember that era in my life, as a kid growing up, the 80s and turbo and this and turbo that. I even had like a little video game where I was so excited to play with the turbo button. I thought it was so cool. So this totally reigned supreme, the BT52. It was totally up there. And I love how you said for it to qualify, it had it was almost overqualified for the race. It was just so good. And if you look at it, the design of the BT52 is breathtaking. If you asked a kid to sketch a Grand Prix car he's going to probably draw something that's sleek and streamlined and flat and big wheels and it pierces the air at crazy speeds and like something out of Speed Racer, right? And and in this one moment in time in 1983, that's what this car actually looked like. A simple but super powerful design that was born to win.
Yeah, love it. And I've got a little story to tell you, actually.
Yes, please tell.
I mean, it's not directly related to the BT52, so I'm stretching it a little bit here. But again, it's a sort of a Goodwood story. Now, one of the predecessors to the BT52 was the BT48, also designed by Gordon Murray, but it had an Alfa Romeo engine, so it definitely doesn't make it to our list. But it was driven by Nicki and I sat with him and he was reunited at Goodwood with his BT48 for the first time since he'd driven it, back in the 80s. And we just had a good old chat about this car and what it meant to him and the experience that he'd had with it. And well, actually, it turns out the experiences weren't so great because despite being a very powerful car, it was very, very unreliable. And he actually only finished 2 races in it. But he did enjoy some good battles with his teammate at the time, who was Nelson Piquet.
There you go.
So very special moment.
Making things come full circle, even in the good and the bad times of those memories. That's awesome.
Exactly. Exactly.
All right. So, Nicki, we got another car coming up. I'm so pumped to talk about the design, but I think I need to calm my excitement. Yeah. So I'm going to hand it over to you to introduce this next one because it's just a stunner.
Yeah. So this next one has literally got me Googling about whether I can actually afford to buy one because I'm so excited about it. It turns out I can't because, well, I couldn't buy the model that I'd like to buy because it's rather expensive. But maybe if we do lots of successful episodes of Changing Lanes, you never know. So the next on our list at number 5 is the BMW E30 M3 touring car from 1987. And It's just so cool. It's so iconic. It's a treasured car. It's a treasured design. The E30 touring car had a 4-cylinder under the hood, which I think just made it so cool as well. And it's why it racked up win after win on the circuits. And I think with this car, it really won over the hearts of motorsport fans as well. The BMW M3, it is still considered the most successful touring car ever based on a Group A regulation. And, well, it just did so well. You know, if we look back at the results it achieved during the German Touring Car Championship in 1987, it won the World Championship title with the Italian racer Roberto Ravaglia behind the wheel. And then there were countless wins at the 24 Hours of Le Mans, 24 Hours of Spa, at Nürburgring. The list goes on and on, really. And again, I just think it is the coolest looking car. And I mean, I've been looking obviously at the road car varieties, but I think the closest I've found to one that I could afford is the 1990 BMW E30 M Sport Evolution at no less than £180,000. So
only that's doable.
Yeah. Do you know anyone that could give me a deal on that?
Well, let's play the lottery and let's see if we win. If one of us wins, we'll treat the other person.
All right,
to
deal.
The car of
Okay,
their
I'm going to hold you to that.
Let's do it.
Can I pick any car?
Yes.
Great, excellent. Look forward to
like
that.
what Nicki was saying, this car is just a stunner. I mean, the design alone just makes your jaw drop. So remember how I was talking about the cars before with the BMW M logo and the streamlined blue and the streamlined dark blue and the streamlined red? Well, this takes this BMW M red, light blue, and dark blue and just goes rock and roll on it.
Yeah.
It is so cool. So from the front left tire all the way over the hood, over the top, to the back right tire, you have this huge streak of painted red, dark blue, and light blue of the BMW M branding logo gorgeousness. It is just rock and roll. This is not an understated car. This is a car that is meant to win, and it is not ashamed to show you how awesome it is. And I just love the design of it.
Yeah, another one we're going to agree on. Although I think I was looking at the road car varieties, and I did find one. It was black, and then it just had the little red line, the little trim around the bottom. Oh, so beautiful.
Stunning.
We can dream. This is great, isn't it? We can just do daydreaming on this.
Exactly. See, this is why it's so difficult to find our top 6, because we could just keep going on and on and on. We're going to have to do a part 2.
Yeah. Oh, definitely. Well, and also remember, this is all about race cars. So I think maybe we should do a part 2 with the road cars.
There we go. All right. So up next, this is all you. This is like... I think we saved the best for last.
This is a look into the future that is happening right now.
Yeah.
Now, some of the listeners may know I host a racing championship called Formula E, which is the all-electric racing championship. And of course, BMW have a team in Formula E. And so it wouldn't be right not to mention the amazing BMW iFE 18. I mean, what a leap when it comes to the transfer of technology, you know, over however many decades, countless decades. It's all about the internal combustion engine. And for the first time ever, we are talking about an electric car with a battery where the aim of the race is all about efficiency and how much you can charge or recharge your battery during the race. And so I think it's an amazing step, and it's a wonderful championship to be part of. And BMW are doing really well in this at the moment. We're actually off for our first race to Saudi Arabia very soon. But yeah, I think it's just important to note the change and the development that we've already seen in this electric car. The fact that it now has a battery capacity to last the duration of a 50-minute long race, with racing drivers battling, some of the greatest racing drivers in the world competing against each other. BMW have got Max Günther and Jake Dennis ahead of season 7, who'll be competing against each other. And they'll be competing against it's the 4 German greats, in fact, going head to head. Mercedes, Porsche and Audi also in Formula E. So, I think it's definitely a car that we have to mention. It's also important because, of course, EVs now very much, particularly around legislation, is going to be something that we're all going to have to partake in.
Most definitely.
Don't worry, I'm a petrol head. I was born a petrol head, but I've been converted into the land of electrification.
Exactly. So that was our top 6 for now. Who knows? There might be a part 2, 3, 4. It could be a trilogy of our favorite BMW race cars. Nicki, dare I ask, what is, out of the 6 that we chose today to share with our podcast listeners, what's your favorite one? Or do you even have one?
Yes, I think I do.
And it is?
The M3, the 1987 M3 E30, because it's just so cool. I mean, I just love that iconic shape, the bodywork, the logos, the colors, obviously the achievements that it had. I think, yeah, it's an easy one for me, actually.
Yeah, I'm
what
right.
about you?
I'm right there with you. Right there with you. 100%.
Excellent. Well, guys, tell us, how did we do?
Yes.
What do you think?
Are we crazy? Are we on point? Let us know. Send us an email. Drop us a line on Spotify. Whatever, however you want to get in touch. We are here to listen to you and would love to hear your feedback on what you think of our top 6. And who knows, we could be right on the money or completely off track. So that wraps up this episode of Changing Lanes. Thank you so much for listening in today.
Yes, do make sure you subscribe to our podcast for all future episodes.
And, dive deeper into all things BMW by heading on over to bmw.com to learn more.
Thanks again. I'm Nicki Shields.
And I'm Jonathan.
And this has been Changing Lanes.
See you next time.